Hi, and welcome to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. Today, we're going to walk me through it. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. My name is Kale Houser, owner and co-founder of Kale Houser Leadership, along with my wife, Liz Houser. Hey, I'm bringing this podcast to you today because a statement that I had actually written down quite a while ago kind of popped back up into my forefront, into my memory, that I wanted to discuss, and I've been meaning to discuss it for a long time because it's so powerful. It is a little statement that can legitimately change the way entirely how you are interacting with your team members, especially if you've got a larger team with all kinds of different skills and variations of whatever it is that you do for your business. And these could be different departments or different technical aspects, especially if you've got a more technical team. And that's the statement of walk me through it. And you kind of get the gist of this, right? I hope this is pretty simple, realistically, in nature, but it can be so difficult because as leaders, we fall into this trap a lot of times of feeling like we have to be the experts because I'm the leader, because I'm the boss, because I'm in charge, I have to know everything. I have to be the one that has all the answers. I have to be the one that makes all the decisions and making sure they're all the correct decisions, and I'm solely responsible for those. And to a degree, that is absolutely true. But also, you can't be responsible for every little tidbit of information, of data, of all those types of things, of skills, in order to run a business, especially a larger business. Even if you hey man, I grew up because my parents owned a pizza shop, and I've always had a dream to open a pizza shop, so I did, and I'm legitimately a really good pizza maker. I make the best pies around. But that does not mean that you're good at ordering supplies. That does not mean you're good at balancing your budget. That does not mean you're good at hiring people, right? There are all these ancillary skills that are absolutely required and needed to be successful in business beyond just that technical aspect of whatever that is, whether it's pizza making or writing code, whatever that is. And we've talked about that before, about being a technical expert doesn't necessarily make you a good leader, right? But this is a way that when you find yourself in this position of a simple statement made to, presumably an employee or a team member, or really anyone else in your life, right? This could be with your child or with your uncle or cousin, whatever interactions you have, is that simple walk me through that, walk me through this, which is just a statement of saying, we're not quite on the same page, or I'm not sure I understand what you're talking about or where you're coming from, or I don't have the full background of this data set and this information. So please, this is me as the leader asking you to walk me through that. Explain your thought process, explain how you came to this conclusion as we're having this discussion about this item. And it's a simple statement, but it can absolutely change your world and how you relate to your people. But it does require a certain amount of humble, right? It does require a certain attitude that you are willing to learn. You have acknowledged that even though I am in charge, I am the boss, I am the leader of this organization, the owner, the CEO, the department head, the supervisor, whatever that is, you have that title and that authority. You are acknowledging that I don't know everything. And that's okay. Guess what? Surprise, surprise, surprise. No one is expected to know everything, right? Kings and emperors had advisors because they don't know everything. Presidents have advisors. Prime ministers have advisors. Senators have advisors, right? Everyone has advisors because there's this basic acknowledgement that you don't know everything. And yet, time and time again, and this happens a lot in the military, because they're put in that position of command, they feel, instead of making it a group effort, because there's a certain delineation between I have to make a command decision, which is hey man, we got to choose that direction and go attack that hill, right? Versus having input into that decision and not feeling that you have to make it on your own with data only comes, right? So we have entire intelligence fields and agencies in the United States, and every country does. But what happens when you stop pretending that you know everything? What happens when you stop pretending that it is your sole responsibility to make these decisions in the dark without consulting anyone else, right? Even as an advisory capacity. You recognize that you're not the expert. And this happens a lot. My friend Aaron Riddell, we talked about this in the tech field of people, are technical experts, right? It's part of the title. They're in the tech field. And you as a supervisor, even though you may have grown up in that, have risen through the ranks in that organization, you had those tech skills, those change every single day and with new developments and stuff. And I don't think there's a realistic expectation that, somebody that was a really good coder even 10 years ago, 15 years ago, who is now the department head or the senior person, has a firm grasp on the understanding of what today's coding environment is and today's technical environment is. I think you kind of get that. But the reality is, once you stop pretending to be the one who knows it all and has all the information, you kind of because people know that you don't, even though they're being respectful. And again, this happens a lot in the military. You're being respectful of the position, of the commander. Everyone knows you don't know. It's pretty obvious because there's no expectation of it, right? It's just not natural for humans to walk up to somebody else and go, "Oh yeah, you know everything about this subject," and blah 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 blah, right? It's just not the way things go, especially when you've been put in charge of an organization that has multiple facets to it. But this allows you, as you recognize this and you approach people with this, walk me through it type of mentality, this allows you to relate to them and gain insight into their thought process, into how they view the world and into how they process information, because we all have those filters, right? And based on our goals and our desires and whatever we're feeling that way and what happened last night, with our date, or, if we got in an argument with our spouse, whatever that is, are those types of filters that everything goes through, and that allows you to gain insight into that, right? So if one of your team members like making this decision or presenting you this data that just seems like kind of off whack of like, this isn't normal, like Chuck usually is, pretty solid with this, and he seems to have not, really thought this through, instead of going, "Chuck, dude, you're screwed up, man. Like, that's totally wrong. I can't believe that you came with that." Simply go, "Chuck, walk me through this. Show me your thought process. Walk me through how you got to this conclusion." And that gives Chuck I almost said advantage. That gives Chuck an opportunity to step back, kind of put himself or herself, whatever the situation is, into that moment again to kind of self-analyze how they came to that conclusion as they're explaining it to you as the leader, right? Does that make sense, and how beneficial that would be, especially to use and to pull somebody out of a potentially negative or wrong situation and into a reevaluation and reanalysis. But keep in mind, especially if you're the type of person who kind of has a little bit more, shall we call it pride in your position or pride in how you're viewed in your workplace, this is not an admission of ignorance. This is not an admission of guilt. This is not an admission of shortcoming by you going to somebody and saying, "Hey, walk me through this," right? There's not an assumption of, "I have no idea what you're talking about, so walk me through this to explain it," right? Instead, it's a declaration of you're trying to understand their perspective, you're trying to understand their thought process, their motivations, whatever that is, and then you gain that mutual respect. Because now you have shown your team members, you've shown your teammates that you are willing to listen to what they're saying and willing to gain insight into how they're making their decisions and how they're processing information. And anytime we do that, think about it. If you have children, anytime you get down on their level, I'm using this example, not saying you get down on your employees' level, but with your kids, you get on their level, which sometimes means literally getting down because they're tiny human beings. And you meet them eye to eye, and you help them walk through different things that happen, right? And maybe they made a mistake. "Hey, little Johnny, why, how did you come to this conclusion? What caused you to do this or this or this," right? And that could be something really awesome. How did you figure out to do that? That's pretty cool. But it's not an admission, when you do that with your children, you're not saying, "Oh, I'm ignorant of this, hey child, explain this to me." But no, it's a trying to understand each other, and as a side benefit and a side effect of that is that person that you're doing that with is more endeared to you. They see that you actually care about them and those types of things. If it's handled appropriately, right? You can't do it with an arrogance or anything of that nature, or even with an agenda to try to prove them wrong, right? Like you caught them red-handed in something. You're like, hey, walk me through how you got the decision because I know it's wrong, right? No, that's not what we're called to do as leaders. We're called to, help and mentor and train and advise and raise people up and allow them to be successful, those types of things. And this is such an easy statement that you can make that will allow those things to happen. All right. So next time you're either faced with something that doesn't quite make sense to you, whether it's out of character for that person or you just plain like, I don't know how you got to that, XYZ answer out of this algebra equation. Walk me through it, right? This probably happens a lot in, high school math classes and things like that. Like, well, little Jeffrey, how did you get to the, 3.728679, exponential, whatever kind of thing. And you have to walk them through it, walk them back through the problem and help them troubleshoot that as necessary. All right. So like I said, takeaways here are, it's not an admission of ignorance, right? Don't assume that it is. Don't assume that other people are thinking of that. Do it appropriately and, to situations where you want to gain more understanding to help you as the leader. And you can even go so far like, hey, I need to make the decision on this of if we're going to go left or right up here at this junction. And I need this information that I'm not quite understanding that you're providing to me, Sally. So can you walk me through how you got to this so I can understand what potential implications this means, right? Because they could have implications that you just don't understand or don't know yet or not made aware of. All right, so walk me through it. Make sure you use it. Let me know if you had success using this, if this totally backfired using this. I would love to hear it. Leave a comment. Certainly let your friends know. Try and get this podcast kind of spread out so we can impact more lives. And if you're in the West Palm Beach area, we're going to have coming up pretty soon an Attract, Hire, and Retain workshop coming up, a masterclass. It's going to be pretty legit. More information to follow on that. And if you haven't yet, please visit the new website, kalehouser.com. That's just KALEHOUSER.com. And you can check out what we've got to offer on there. I would love your feedback. All right, shoot me an email at kale@kalehouserleadership.com. That would be awesome. I'd love to interact with you and see what's going on. But otherwise, until we meet again, I hope you have a fantastic afternoon, no matter where you're at in the world. Bye.